Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ed Long. I'm the president of the Livingston County War Museum, and we're glad to have you here today. We're standing in our World War I exhibit, and we have a few things we'd like to point out to you today that we find quite interesting and things that most people have probably never seen. The first thing I'm going to talk about this morning is this photograph to my right here. This is a picture, of course, looking at it, of an eagle, and it has a shield on it. But as we zoom in on it and look at it closer, we realize this is made up of people. Well, these people happen to be Army nurses and Army infantrymen standing in a formation on their base, and behind them we can see their barracks and the rest of the base. Now there's 18,000 people in this picture. You can imagine the amount of planning and efforts it took to get all these troops out onto the field at one time, standing in exactly the right position to make this beautiful eagle with the shield. Now, this was taken down in the state of Georgia in 1918. And the thing that amazed me, if you look at it at first, it looks like just a black and white photo of an eagle, but as we zoom in on it, like I told you earlier, the white is the Army nurses and the dark colored uniforms are the Army infantrymen. And they formed this beautiful eagle. And the big question I had was, how was this ever done? And I did some research, and I found out the way they did this. If we have any of you people who watch the Antique Roadshow, they take the old Graphics box camera, which looked like a big wood box sitting on top of a tripod, and it had a lens coming out the side of it. Well, they took this Graphics box camera, loaded it in a hot air balloon, and they ran it up between 4,500 and 5,000 feet. And at that time, the photographer would adjust the camera, and he would shoot these pictures. Now, this was only done, as far as I can find out through my research, during World War I, right after World War I. These pictures don't exist for World War II. And as we look here, we can see the detail of the barracks and all the troops standing in the formation. The photograph is labeled down in the lower left corner. You can see that it's 18,000 troops standing down in the state of Georgia, taken in 1918. So I think it's a remarkable picture. Now, right to the left of that picture, we have a picture of a soldier here, and that happens to be Harlow Iverson. Harlow Iverson is a local native here from the Pontiac area. He actually grew up and lived his whole life in Cornell, Illinois, which is about 12 miles down the road here on Route 116. And he left Cornell and went off to World War I. And he was stationed down in Georgia, and he was actually a postmaster. And during his whole time in the service, he served as a postmaster. But what's neat about it, he is standing right here in the wing of the eagle. And the reason I know that is because Harlow Iverson happens to be my wife's father. And he served during the war, and he's the one that gave me this picture. I was so fascinated by it, I've done some more research, and I actually came up with some more of these pictures taken by the same company. And if you look here in the back, you'll see a picture of the Statue of Liberty. And then as we go on down, over here we have the picture of the Liberty Bell. Now, the Liberty Bell actually was documented and printed in a magazine that came out during the war years. And I've got the page out of the magazine to document the picture. So all of these pictures had literally thousands of troops in them with their barracks in the background. And they only exist back in the World War I era. And I find them very interesting, and it's something you don't see every day. Now, for sort of a little laughter today, Harlow Iverson was from Cornell. And if you look right up here, this is the main street in Cornell, Illinois. And we see all these horses that rode into town. They tied their horses up to the hitching post, and they went inside and had a few beers and a sandwich. Those troops right there happened to be troops going off to World War I. They actually rode through Cornell, right here in Illinois, And they kept right on going down the old Route 66, and they went all the way to Chicago. And when they arrived in Chicago, they loaded their horses, their equipment, and they went across the sea and went off to fight World War I. So that's the U.S. Cavalry, and I believe that one was 1917 when that was filmed, of the actual cavalry coming through downtown Cornell. And I find that to be very interesting, and even that it's tied to Harlow Iverson because he was from Cornell. So that's a pretty neat picture. The next thing I'm going to show you is called trench art. Now, a lot of you may have seen this on the Antique Roadshow, but trench art did not happen until after the war. When the war ended, the French artists went out in the battlefield and they were searching for spent brass shells. Now, these shells could be big, like the one we have here on the desk, an artillery shell, or they could be small, like a rifle shell. But they collected these shells, they carried them back to their art studio, and they meticulously hand-pounded them into artwork. Now, right here is a big example. This is a 75mm art shell, but I'm going to move it here slowly so you can see what it really is. As I lay it down here, okay, now you see the bottom, there's the primer, and that's a 75mm artillery shell. They had collected that off the battlefield, carried it back to their art studio, and they hand-pounded all this artwork. And as I stand it up here where you can photograph it, you will see, if you look closely, that it was very carefully done. They did very fine etchings onto the brass cases, and this one turned out probably to be a flower vase. So that's a beautiful piece of trench art. These are found overseas. You can actually purchase them in a lot of antique shops. And here in the United States, quite a few of these ended up in basements and trunks. So if you ever run across one of these, don't throw it out. It's actually, they're valuable, and that's a pure brass artillery case that's been made into a flower vase by the French artist. So I think it's quite attractive. You just got to come in here and actually pick it up and look at it to experience it. It's a lot of fun to do, and it's real history. But that's what trench art is. If you ever hear anybody talking about trench art, those are shells that have been remolded into some form of art. And some of them are little, like pencil holders, and other ones are big like that flower vase. So you'll see all kinds of things. Okay, at this time, what we're showing you here, we have a stack that usually lays on the corner of the table, but these are all postcards from World War I. That means they're like 115 years old, and I find them quite unique to look at, and it's even fun to read the writing on the back of them. These were sent home from troops that sent them to their loved ones or to their wives, and they're just examples of 100-year-old postcards that you probably never would get a chance to see anywhere else. And you can see that they're very artistic. Some of them have some really meaningful views on the front. Some of them are sad. They show troops being treated in hospitals. And I find them to be very interesting. So it's just another thing we have here that you won't get to see every day. Okay, the next thing I'd like to show you today is this device right here. Very interesting looking device. This is called a stereoscope. It's over 100 years old. It's built of wood. It has a handle on the bottom. And if you notice, it has a lens cover on the back. And we have photographs. These photographs are specially made. Notice it's a double image. What happens is when you take one of these photo cards, place it in the stereoscope very carefully, the card sets into the stereoscope. Also on the back of the card, you can see what you're looking at. It tells the complete story of the picture that you're viewing. And what you do, you hold this up to your eyes, and then there's a knob down here. And as you move this, the picture comes into sharper and sharper focus. And it shows great, great depth. This is actually World War I 3D. And we show this to all the students and the children that come up here. They really like it. It's a 100-year-old stereoscope. If you have one of these, do not throw it out. Hang on to it and keep it, because it's very rare. And the photographs are rare. Now, these photographs that were sold during World War I, they were sold in packs of 25. And the pack of 25 overseas in those days used to cost about $3 or $4 in American money. Nowadays, these are priceless because you cannot replace these. And if you have a couple of packs of these cards that your grandparents saved and you have the stereoscope, you've really got history in your hand. This is a 100-year-old stereoscope along with a set of these cards. Makes a wonderful collector's item. So when you come up here to the museum, you'll be able to view the cards we have, and I assure you I have plenty of these for you to look at, and they're very interesting reading. Now, this card I have in my hand, let me lay the stereoscope down a minute. This particular card in my hand I kind of like because this is Great Lakes, Illinois, the Naval Training Center. The picture has like 12,000 Navy sailors standing in formation. It probably was their graduation day when they went through boot camp, and they photographed it. And if you look at the back of the card, it says thousands of Uncle Sam's sailors. So that's a pretty neat card in itself, because it's right from down the road here to the Great Lakes Naval Training Center in Chicago. So that's kind of interesting. Now, some of the cards were actually taken from the war. And this one I'm going to try to show you. This one is a hospital tent on the battlefield area where they're actually treating wounded soldiers. So that in itself is remarkable that they actually photographed these, brought the pictures back and turned them into stereograph photos for the machine. The company that made these actually was called Keystone View Company, and it was manufactured and copyrighted in the U.S. So these were manufactured in the U.S., but they were sold worldwide. So it's pretty neat. But this one shows a hospital tent. We're not going to look at all of them today, but if you come up to the museum, we'd be glad to let you look through literally hundreds of those that we do have in our collection. Also, I'd like to make a few comments about the War Museum. The Livingston County War Museum we started in 2004. The museum now houses about 300 uniforms and 10,000 artifacts. All the artifacts you see here in these cases and on our walls, all were donated by private individuals. And in most cases, they came from a veteran or the veteran's family. Everything in here has a story, and we enjoy sharing these stories. And we'd like to invite all of our local friends and our overseas friends to come over to our museum, and I guarantee you'll have an experience in here like no other place. We take a lot of pride in our displays, and we're more than glad to explain them to the public. So thanks for sharing this video with us today.